Ago Matter with Anya, where transformation meets testimony. Tonight, we welcome Wendy Gunn, number one best-selling author, keynote speaker, empowerment coach, and a walking miracle. After surviving ovarian cancer and experienced a divine healing, Wendy didn't just recover, she rose from losing over 100 pounds to launching a thriving business after age 60. Her journey is a radiant reminder that with faith, clarity, and intention, it's never too late to live fully, boldly, and on purpose. So, Wendy, your story begins with a life altering diagnosis. What was your mindset in those early moments? And what shifted for you spiritually and emotionally after you are healing?
Well, thank you, Anya, for having me today. And a wonderful question. And I I started out as a person who was very unsure of myself, and I was not in a mindset of accomplishment or achievement. I was very obese, and I was very insecure. I was in the three P's that I talk about, which are people pleasing and perfectionism and procrastination. And how I got from there to where I am as a confident Christian entrepreneur and big goal achiever. When you're going through, and I was going through ovarian cancer, often when you're going through a big trial, you don't yet see the end. You don't see where God is taking you. And I didn't. I had people, ask me, and if I may share just that beginning of that story a little bit more, would that be all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as I said, I was comparing and copying my friends. I was feeling very insecure, and but God wanted to change me. And so had the mindset of I can't and I'm not able and other people are, so I will do what they are doing. But that was not what God had in mind. And often he uses trials. And so one afternoon, one day in May, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which is called the silent killer because you often do not catch the symptoms until it's too late. And at the time I was diagnosed, they told me I had two football sized tumors in me, that it had not been caught early, and that it had spread. But God was doing all kinds of things in my life during that time. And the first thing he did was to get me into surgery 3 days later. In those 3 days, everyone we knew and many who we didn't know were praying. And 3 days later, when I went into surgery, they found just one, still football sized, but just one tumor. It was caught early, it was contained, and it had not spread. And I want you to just let that sink in for a second because either a trained professional saw and measured a tumor that did not exist, or God did a miracle in my body and my life. At that time, many people were asking me, why do you think God allowed you to have cancer, ovarian cancer? And I honestly said, I don't know. I did not see the big picture. I did not see what he was doing. My mindset was just to survive and get through, to keep trusting him and believing that I would be healed. And I went through chemotherapy, and I have now been over 20 years cancer free. But the mindset shift began with that huge life and death trial. God did have a reason, a purpose in it. And when I went through that, my mindset shifted to realize that I was uniquely created by Him for a purpose. But He gave me a passion to tell you, every person, you that you are also created uniquely by God for a purpose. You are different. Your story is different than anyone else's on earth. And that comparison, that people pleasing, that perfectionism, that procrastination that I had been caught up in, he took me through the process of change. The very first change he made the next year in desperation to be healthier. And that hunger is so key in each one of us. That desperation, that hunger to change has to be there. And I was desperate to be healthier. It was a life and death thing for me. And I lost 50 pounds that next year. That was the first domino that fell over that caused many other dominoes to fall of big goals being achieved in my life. Over the years, I've accomplished raising my children to adulthood, and we love them and they like us, and we like being together, and they are walking with the Lord as well. And we homeschooled from start to finish. And then after the age of 60, you mentioned, I started an online business. And I lost another 50 pounds after the age of 60, so that I've lost over 100 pounds in my life. And then I grew an email list to over 12,000 with an open rate of 37% when the average is about half of that. And then we took our whole family on a dream trip to Italy, our grown children, and now we had a son in law as well, on a dream trip using miles that I had saved over the years. And then I became a best-selling author, and I am still accomplishing those bucket list, what I call bucket list dreams and goals. And my message is that you are created uniquely by God for a purpose. But if you have breath left, God's still got goals left for you to achieve.
That's amazing. So, did that miracle moment feel like a beginning rather than an end?
Looking back, it definitely was. I look back at it, but when you are in the trial, you often do not see the big picture. So it took me years before I could look back and see, oh, yes, there were at least three reasons why, the first of which was that God wanted to change me. And he was writing a story. He is writing a story in and through your life. And he uses trials more than triumphs to transform you. And so it took many years before I was able to look back. And I began on these podcast interviews, just like this one, to tell my story for God's glory. And that has become a theme because I want you to recognize your story and tell your story for God's glory, because that is your purpose in life.
hmm So many of us wait for someday, but your story reminds us that breakthrough often begins in the darkest valleys.
Yes, very true.
Mhm.
We we must just embrace our story. Many people, I always say, you have a choice with everything that happens to you. You have a choice. You can allow it to make you bitter, or you can allow it to make you better. And so many of us in our minds, we become bitter. We begin to think negative thoughts about what has happened to us. We feel bitter towards God. We're angry. We are wondering, why did this happen to us? What did we do what to deserve that? We don't deserve this. We don't deserve that. We must take our thoughts captive. We must transform our thoughts first, because so much happens up here in our heads first. Then our actions follow. And if we recognize that the trials in our life are also part of our story, then we can let them transform us. We can let them help us to become all that we are meant to become. So we must not allow them to let us become bitter and angry. And in the Bible, and I try to live my life according to the Bible as God's word and that guide, and as a believer in Jesus Christ. And that is what I use as my guide. That is what I line up to. And so in the Bible, it talks about, and so many people are interested in your physical health, but we often do not recognize how our thoughts affect our mental health and our physical health. And in the Bible, it talks about envy and bitterness rot the bones. So many women are interested in your bone health, but you need to recognize how your thoughts affect that. And so I really encourage in and I have steps that I've taken to overcome bitterness. And I have steps to take that I have overcome procrastination and perfectionism. And God has led me through these different things that so many go through so that you can achieve success in all the different areas, and that you can see your life is not over yet. And I really love to talk to um, Christian women, especially, but women who are in that Gen X, although I'm not a person who loves labels. But if you're over 40, 45, and you think your life is, you know, it's going so fast and you've missed your opportunities, I want to encourage you. If you've still got breath, God's still got goals left. And in fact, as you mentioned, I look back and I see how my life maybe began with that ovarian cancer diagnosis in my 40s. It was after that that I achieved my biggest goals. So, and after 60, excuse me. So I want to encourage you that today, embrace today. And today can be the beginning of your life. It is the beginning of the rest of your life. So believe that you can accomplish the goals that God has for you, and they're going to be different. Excuse me. Every person has a purpose and a story, and it's different than the other person's. So don't be trying to people please. Excuse me. We often are trying to live up to our parents, even as we get old and maybe our parents aren't even alive anymore. We still may be trying to live up to their expectations of us, or we're comparing ourselves. Well, I don't have those letters after my name, or I haven't achieved that, or I haven't achieved that. It does not matter. You are you, and you are very capable. God has put in you, inside of you, what you need. And with his help, you can do anything. And so there's bucket lists that we all have of things we want to accomplish before our life is over. I'm sure that if I say, what are your bucket list items? Immediately you think of things that you want to accomplish before your life is over. And maybe you feel like, oh, time is going by so fast and I'm running out of time. But I help you to get get rid of those limiting beliefs and that fear that keeps you from going after those things that you are meant to do and accomplish in life. And it's so important what you think. It starts in what you think. There's a saying, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. And it's so important to believe that you can. Believe first and then achieve.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So, you have said trials transform us more than triumphs. How did walking through hardship become the fire that shaped your purpose?
Well, my mindset about it had to change. And to be able to see what actually had happened. For many years, I didn't realize that it really was a miracle that God had done in my life. I thought I remembered that I had been told there were two tumors. I thought that this and this and this were true. But a number of years ago, I actually got to see in print the numbers, the dimensions of the two tumors that trained professional had seen. And I had to take out, a ruler and look, and they were huge. But I was so obese that I wasn't able to see that they were, I didn't recognize that they were in me. But when I saw that in print, and I began to ask God, what do you want me to do? What is my purpose? And I began to take all of these goals and dreams that I had to God in prayer and ask him, what am I supposed to achieve? What do you want me to be and become? And then to look back, not with bitterness, not with regret, but to look back on my life and to see the times where he had brought me through, times where, oh, yes, he was at work. And to also just put aside, I think that we all struggle with negativity about ourselves. We all struggle to see ourselves, and it's not a pride thing that I'm talking about. It's to see yourself accurately, to see, okay, yes, I did achieve this, and yes, this was a triumph. That was a trial, but that's not going to be the end of the story. And to keep going every day, we have to keep going. And as I learned to overcome procrastination and perfectionism and to begin to say, done is better than perfect, and to really show up and be reliable, to be faithful, and just do my best and let God do the rest. It was transforming. Am I perfect? No. You aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us is perfect. But we must show up and do our best. And then we have gifts and talents. Look at what they are. Think about what they are. And then learn and grow in skills, grow in your understanding, and use your gifts and talents more and more. Prioritize what are the most important things for you to do. And it'll be different, as I said. So just put aside trying to live up to somebody else's idea of who you're supposed to be. And then really, really pay attention to the input that you are getting. We are defined by who we meet and what we read. And we need to have boundaries. Make sure that you are having input that is going to help you achieve your goals. Make sure that your mentors are people that will help you become who you are intended to become, and not people who will get you off track, and not friends that are making negative impacts on your life. You need to have wise companions, the Bible says. So it's very, very important who you're listening to and what you're listening to. And that's key. That has been key. And then your thoughts. You just have to put aside those thoughts that are not what are going to help you move forward and become all that God intended for you to become.
Mhm. Makes sense. And I love that idea. Suffering as sacred soil where something new can bloom.
Yes. And I talk a lot about that because I see that over about every 7 years, God has taken my life as soil. And as a gardener, master gardener, he tills it up, turns it upside down, and then he fertilizes it. Well, that's not a pleasant experience. And he removes things that are going to get in the way of him growing. And he plants seeds. And he wants to harvest a huge harvest in my life. But I need to be recognizing and embracing that process, that there's going to be trials. There's going to be, it's not a smooth trajectory up from start to, achievement. And so I need to recognize that there will be trials, but I need to take them as, okay, now what should I learn from this? And what should I take from this? And then there will be grieving, there will be loss, but to turn that loss into something that helps the soil produce a harvest of achievement, a harvest that can be something that impacts many lives around me. And then tell your story. Do not hesitate to tell your story, including the bad, the good, and the ugly and the beautiful is all part of it. So tell your story because it will help others.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, what a soul shifting conversation with Wendy Gunn. From illness to impact, her life proves that we are never too old, too broken, or too late to walk boldly into our purpose. So, Wendy, before we close, please let listeners know how they can connect with you and learn more about your home for God.
Well, you can go to yourhomeforgod.com, yourhomeforgod.com, and you will have an opportunity to get my free lead magnets, and you will also see how to work with me and to get my best-selling books.
Mhm. And to everyone tuning in, remember, you were created for something extraordinary. Now go live it. And don't forget to tell your story for God's glory. So until next time, stay rooted, stay ready, and let your mind rise above the matter.